90 miles from Dublin town, I'm in the hedge block sound. To help you understand me plight, the story.
Everybody, first of all, everybody turn off the mobile devices, whatever they might be. An fáilte roh got done an seo like a new off P.o.W. We're all welcome to the new P.o.W. office in Dungannon called P.o.W. And tonight we're going to host a talk from the blanket down here beside me about the hunger strike and other issues. I'm sure nobody's been talked to beforehand. Everybody's free to say whatever they feel. You wouldn't plan to tell these boys what to say anyway, I'm afraid. We'll just kick it off with a wee starter page of put it in context really. The 1975 IRA truce on the part of the British was largely a tactical ploy. Over the years, many pieces of evidence point strongly to a hidden agenda carried out by the British negotiators. Research would agree that even the British became eager to distance themselves from the whole agenda. Following a revision of security arrangements saw the introduction of police primacy, an attempt at blackmail by withdrawing the army in return for effective policing. However, policing to the British did not merely mean consigning the army to barracks and the replacement of soldiers with bobbies on the beat. Subsequently, it involved heavily armed native-born counterinsurgents who, under the Ulsterisation policy, would remove the burden of war against Republicans from the British Army. In the three-strand approach, comprising of Ulsterisation, criminalisation and normalisation, these had a vital and immediate effect on the six-county security policy and consequently the situation in jail. Under the Ulsterisation, security was progressively handed over to the RUC and the Ulster Defence Regiment, a six-county version of what the Americans referred to as a Vietnamisation, in response to the Vietnam War with the intention of letting the natives do the fighting. Normalisation was intended to return the province to a normal way of life as soon as possible. However, the vast amount of leisure centres, culture events, road building and other attempts only offered rich pickings to these legal or otherwise. In an attempt to assume normality, consequently to the silence following a bomb blast, builders were speedily put to work repairing the damage. In a parallel approach, criminalisation meant what it said and produced a massive effect on the outside through the diplomat court system. Provisions regarding the admissibility of confessions were liberally availed of, that over 80% of those convicted in the diplomat courts were detained as a result of confessions. Similarly, despite the provisions made with regard to torture, these were certainly extracted by sometimes very brutal methods. Consequently, prison population drastically shot up from around 700 at the start of the Troubles to around 3,000 in the period under review. A further ploy to make it appear that Republicans were simply a criminal organisation and fuel unionist and Tory backbench anger at the prisoner of war status enjoyed by special category prisoners. Central to the operation of criminalisation strategy was the Gardiner report. Lord Gardiner, a former Lord Chancellor, considered measures to deal with terrorism in the north in the context of civil liberties and human rights. During this time there were 1,119 special category prisoners and a further 555 detainees, and in his report Gardiner condemned the granting of special category status. Gardiner further recommended that the way to deal with this problem was to build more controversial prisons in the north along the normal cellular line. Subsequent to his report saw the establishment of the H blocks in the Long Kesh complex. And as a result of this policy, the remand prison, Maze Prison, they renamed it the Maze Prison. 6 days after the report was published, Merlin Rees announced in the House of Commons that the new prisons were to be built and in turn demonstrating a jaundice-faced set of talks. Sorry, come on ahead. Come on. Set of talks. The first apparently aimed at holding a truce and conferring a certain political status on Sinn Féin by conceding the incident centres. The other, which began secretly with the prisoners' leaders aimed at doing away with the special category status and identifying Republicans as criminals. As the H blocks were built during the talks period, it would appear there was ample tangible evidence placed before the IRA leadership's eyes regarding what was planned. However, all sorts of baits were offered to distract their gaze from what was taking place. During the negotiation process, one of the prisoners' leaders, David Morley, was shown a copy of the speech which was to be delivered by Merlin Reid to the House of Commons on Thursday, the 25th of March 1976. Morley had been warned beforehand that it would contain some strong language and that it would have a bearing on the special category issue. He was subsequently allowed to make some changes to the script before Reid actually delivered the speech, a remarkable circumstance in itself. One wonders what the Unionists and Tory backbenchers would have to say had they known that an Irish felon had been given the right to utter a speech given the House of Commons and by the House of Commons by the Secretary of State. Days after Reid spoke, the prisoners handed over a document to the prison authorities stating that negotiations were being broke off. The document stated that they were prepared to die for the right to retain political status. Those who try to take it away must fully prepare to pay the same price. With the ending of special category status and the closing of the dissident centres, the British also stepped up their campaign 7 years is enough, and subsequently spoke about squeezing Republicans like toothpaste. However, they countered this with a slogan campaign of their own, 700 years is too much. This appeared on many a gable wall in Belfast. What did not appear in public was the fact that a new form of warfare had broken out in the 6-county prison system. Special category status has been abolished from the 1st of March 1976. From that day on, no further prisoners were admitted to the compounds which retained their prisoners of war status. New prisoners were expected to serve their sentence in the H blocks, wear prison uniform and conform to prison discipline. However, on the 14th of September 1976, 4 days after Mason arrived in the province, Kieran Nugent, a young IRA volunteer, had been sentenced for hijacking a van, proceeded to make history. He informed the prison authorities that if they wanted him to wear a prison uniform, they would have to nail the clothes on his back. This defiance caused Nugent to become the first blanket man. Now, in this evening's talk, we're talking specifically about the blanket man. But even as I look around the room, I see lots of other prisoners and lots of other people that were involved in different prisoner campaigns, right from the early 70s right up to the present day. And we also have cognizance of, there's also prisoners locked up today, there's also people interned today like Tony Taylor. So we keep that in mind when we have these discussions tonight. Go on, David.
England might force me to associate with the dregs raked in from the gutters, might shave my head like theirs and stamp the government broad arrows all over me. Humiliation might be heaped upon me with an unsparing hand, and punishments diabolically brutal, measured out for years, but never for one moment did I forget that I was an Irish political prisoner. The words of Thomas James Clark, first signatory of the proclamation when he was imprisoned in England. The British administration in Ireland has consistently denied a political motive to those involved in the use of armed resistance in the long-standing conflict over sovereignty in Ireland. Irish Republican prisoners have made organised political demands on the orthodox prison system since the middle of the 19th century. Clark described the indignities, brutalities and the torture which the British prison officials had devised especially for Irish political prisoners at that time. Political recognition was consistently denied to individual prisoners during this period. They were, it appears, singled out for the special treatment because of their unwillingness to conform to normal prison conditions. They were never sure of getting a letter or a visit due at that time. These could be stopped for the slightest misdemeanour, such as trying to talk to a fellow prisoner. Irish prisoners were first accorded large-scale P.o.W. status in Frongach in North Wales following the Easter Rising. And about 4 years ago, myself and Barry went over to Frongach. It's a very isolated place in North Wales. And what happened was after the Rising, people like Billy Kelly here in the town and his son Tom, they had been arrested and brought to Galt Barracks, just arrested on the 5th or 6th of May. And they were then brought, like hundreds of others, to Richmond Barracks in Dublin. And on the 7th of June they were brought over and interned in that camp in Frongach. Frongach was actually a whisky distillery, but the Brits had been using it to intern German prisoners during the course of the First World War. So the German prisoners were moved out and the Irish prisoners were moved in. So it was sort of by accident that the Irish prisoners were recognised as POWs because the staff in the jail, the military staff, the British military staff, just treated them the way they'd been treating the Germans all along. So it sort of come about more or less by accident. Captivity was just another chapter in the continuous struggle for freedom. In this manner, Frangach were laid out the foundations for the policy of organisation and resistance within jails and internment camps, which formed the basis of all subsequent prison activity in the years to follow. In the tradition of republicanism, no political prisoner just vanished into a jail to be forgotten. The jails and camps themselves were an important sector of the revolutionary front. Nowhere in our history has this been more obvious than in the period between 1976 and 81. After it had been declared by British government in December 75 that anyone sentenced after the 1st of March 1976 would, regardless of the nature of the activity or claimed motivation, be treated like a common criminal. They would not serve out their sentence in the cages of Long Kesh with their comrades, but instead they were to be housed in the purpose-built cellular accommodation in a separate phase of Long Kesh called the H blocks. These were built to accommodate 90 to 100 men in 4 self-contained wings and designed to give the prison regime maximum control of the blocks. The blocks were touted throughout the world as the most modern prison in Europe, whilst the reality for these young Republicans was a regime, the vast majority from the loyalist and unionist background, whose only aim was to break their will, subjugate and enslave them in a traditional penal system, which would draw no distinction between a common criminal and those whose motives were political. Simply put, what was recognised as a political act prior to March 76 became a criminal act through legislation, despite the fact that the individual and collective characters of the prisoners remained the same. The accounts of these first young men denied political status, most of them in their teens or early 20s, epitomise the Republican tradition of solidarity and conviction, and give birth to those who have become known worldwide as simply the blanket men. The first young men sentenced after status was removed didn't even know where they were going, but they all agreed they would never wear the monkey suit. It was key to the resolution of the protest at the end, and possibly maybe sooner than it did end. So having to leave their clothes that they were wearing at prison reception, which meant that they had to walk naked from a wing to wing, and were put into a 96 concrete cell with just a blanket, isolated, segregated, brutalised and demonised by beating them. Newspapers were kept from them. The radio in the wing that belonged to the screws were kept low so no news could be heard. They would also forgo meals if there was any food shortage from the kitchen. A short while into the protest, in an attempt to use their age against them, those young men under 21 were separated from the others. They became known as the yippies, the young prisoners. Denied any form of stimulus and another tactic to break the protest, and denied any visits for their refusal to conform, 1 letter a month, which even if it was delivered was often so heavily censored that it verged on the ridiculous. The ever-present fear of beatings, confined to their cells except to wash and slop out and collect food, which would be eaten naked in the cell. Their numbers steadily grew, and with that their morale. As the weeks and months went by, the H blocks grew. By March 77, all the other prisoners in the criminal end of the jail had doubled up, but the blanket men were still alone in their cells. April 12, 77, they were all moved to H5, with 2 wings A and D for the over 21s, and the other 2 wings B and C for the yippies. Under the same roof, they were able to set up their own structure and organise in a proper manner. Beating the system was the order of the day from the start of the protest. From talking to each other down at the heating pipes, there was metal heating pipes that run along the back wall of the cell. So you could talk out either through the door or out through the window, but if you wanted to have a private conversation, you could talk either side by getting down to the heating pipe and talk to your comrade there. Speaking Irish amongst themselves so as not to be understood by their enemy, a language that would be alien to their captors and have great cultural significance to them. Later, through organised rangana or classes, Irish would become the everyday language within the blocks. As I said earlier on, they were denied things like pens, tobacco, reading material, access to news, or anything like that. So they had to come up with methods of getting the message out to the public about the actual hell that was going on within the blocks. So they come up with different ways of smuggling statements out, of private letters out to family, and of smuggling the likes of tobacco and that in, and Noel here will explain some of the methods that was used.
This is a barge, but the women and some men and children would have had inside their nappies to smuggle into the blanket mate. It contained tobacco, flints, and refills of pens. Now, that was smuggled in by most people and then took back to their cell. And what the person would have done was they would have split this all up into wee small sachets for everybody. And on a Sunday, they would have went to the mass and shared it out. So they would. Also, they would have smuggled in the Republican news that height. And that's where you got the news from every week, a small Republican news. And that would have been given out on the wings and then shared it to blocks. And that's how we got the news in. And to get a light, there was a button and there was a flint in it. And you had a towel around you and you had to pull the threads of the towel and fluffed it up and you'd have flicked it till the spark come. And you'd have got a light and you'd have lit your cigarette. Right, you had cigarette papers, but some people used toilet roll and Bible. So the Bible was well smoked. But the women and the people outside played their part in keeping the blanket going because they brought in vital stuff to the men. That's all I have to say on it. So it is.
They smoked some extreme things in desperation, other than tobacco, the fluff of a blanket.
There was also a wee radio made, and it was on the wing as well. So it was a wee radio was made about that small. It was crystal made radio.
The video was nicknamed Maggie Taggart, one of the presenters from the news. But there was a fellow from Strabane, it was McNally, nicknamed him the suitcase because he could put that much stuff inside him. But he was one of the ones that smuggled the crystal radios were the size of a battery. But just a great bite lad for here, on my first experience with the barge. There was two so-called QMs on Crumlin Road, and their job was to make up the barge prior to being sentenced, and then you had to bring the stuff up to the blocks. But these two QMs had never used barge, no notion of what a barge was. So they worked on the theory that one size fitted all. You know, it was obviously sitting at this table, like, we're not all the same size, and they had no consideration for me being a bit smaller than everybody else. So they come and handed me the barge before lockup, and I put a button over it. Told me how to get the barge inside me, and I just thought, mad, because we're mad. So what I done was, I felt guilty. I felt that if you don't bring the barge up, there were people waiting, and there was also personal notes in it. There was things from the road staff to staff in the blocks. So I fought all night with my conscience what to do, and I decided before I went to sleep that I wasn't doing this. I mean, way on this plan. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, my Republican conscience grabbed me by the hair and shook the life out of me. Woke me up, told me to try, at least try it, if not do it. So the young fella came into my cell that day from Armagh City. He's in on a hijacking charge, but he couldn't speak, and he was deaf. So already the lad was terrorised. He was totally disoriented. He couldn't communicate with anybody or anything. And my head was all over the place, so I wasn't even trying to communicate with him. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, I said, I'll give this thing a go. And it was horrendous. I mean horrendous. This thing was far too big for me. Far too big. So I walked at it for about half an hour, and the only way I could do it was I went down to the bottom of the bed, and he was sleeping on the bed over here. I went down, so I put my foot up on his bed, and eventually this thing started to move, and then I changed my mind, but it wouldn't come back out, and it wouldn't let it go in the right. So I eventually got it in, and there was about maybe half an inch of it sticking out. So I thought maybe that's as far as it's going to go in there. and I was totally conscious of the young lads in the bed. So when I turned round, I had the blankets up to there, and he had eyes on him the size of the moon. Because I'm standing on his bed, with my back and my finger up the earth. And I never met the lad since, but I want to explain to him what I was doing. I don't want him getting the wrong notion of what I was doing.
Maybe he's getting medication for it now.
But I probably get the treatment for it. I went, the next morning whenever I went to the shower then, they told me to go and take a hot shower. Once you take a hot shower, and the heat hits your back, I thought it fell out. The thing disappeared. You know, the muscles, the softer they get, it went inside me and I swore it would never ever come out again. So my understanding was I was getting sentenced that day. I'd be in the blocks in the wing that evening and I'd been sorted out. But when I went down to the blocks, they put me on the punishment block. And I didn't know it was a punishment block. And I thought I was only one on the protest. I kept shouting out and nobody was answering. And then it was Desi Ellis, he calls himself Donald McAllis now. But what happened was, he asked me, I had a wee bit of Gaelic, and he asked me had I got the barge, and he said aye, so he told me to go and get the barge out, and that he would take a wee bit. So I done that, and when I went back again, there was no barge. He stole the barge. So I thought, I'm going to get ridiculed anyway. I'm going through all this, nobody's going to believe a word of this. And someone, if I went to H5, it was in Martin Hurston's wing. And I was telling them the story, and some of them were saying, aye, right, he said, what do you call this boy? And I said, McDellis. He says, oh, that's true enough, yes. That's the kind of thing McDellis would have done. But anyway, there were also those who left the protest at times. And the terminology used was that they squeaky booted, or that they were squeaky booters. Now, as the years progressed, that became a very derogatory term. And as far as I'm concerned, anybody that left the protest, I have the same respect for them as those who stayed on the protest. I'll give you one prime example. There was David Lennon, he's living in Derry now. David Lennon went off the protest. And you have to consider it's not just you in the protest, the families in the protest. So David Lennon left the protest. And that was the only time I heard the squeaky booter. Because what they're doing is, even though you're on the blanket, there's a uniform for you up in the big cell if you ever go out on a visit. So what you have is plasticky shoes, brand new shoes, never worn. And as you walk up the lantern with them, they make a wee squeaky noise, so you call it the squeaky booter. And I could hear him walking past. Now I was out of jail within 2 years of that. And before I got out of jail, David Lennon was back in jail, caught with a £1,000 ball, heading into Lisburn city centre, which is a really hostile area to be operating in. So, you know, I'm not judging David Lennon. No. That's what he done. He was straight out, reported for active service again, and there he was back in jail. So I think it's wrong to judge anybody that left the protest, you know.
Just when you're on that there, so there was an OC in the Crum, and they used to get the young boys and they used to say, if you don't go on the blanket, you're a criminal, you're this, that and the other. And the young boys terrified. Most young boys tried it at the very least. Like, as you say, like if they couldn't stick it, no harm to them, like that was, you know, I'd always say that myself. But anyway, this guy was great. He was from Belfast, he put him across his case, you know, if you don't go to the blocks, you're a criminal, you'll be thought nothing of and all that there. But anyway, down the line, when we went down to the blanket, and he was actually OC at the Crum.
Is that what do you call him?
He got sentenced.
Small boy?
He was away with the beard, I forget his name now, it's actually just run through my mind. But anyway, that was alright. And he got sentenced to 8 years imprisonment. He went straight to the criminal blocks and never done one day in the blanket. Now that's what I call the fucking card. Because, yes, and he had all the young lads terrified about going up, and most of them did, they never done a day. And him OC.
Right.
Just thought I'd get that in there, just when you're at
problem.
that spot.
The first task of the blanket men undertook in H5 was to try and get reading material. A blank refusal was met with, wear the uniform and you'll get the reading material. A week later the screws told the men that they would no longer be allowed to the sinks to wash or shower. They would only be allowed to go out 2 at a time. They would have no mirrors. They would all have to share the same bowl of water. They refused and grew the familiar beards that were to be a symbol of their struggle. By October 77, H5 was full and H3 was opened. Their very existence was a powerful symbol of resistance, but their routine of becoming institutionalised And among suggestions discussed was a no-wash protest. As brutality and harassment increased, so the protest escalated, starting with a refusal to brush or mop out the cells, refusing a change of bedding or to wash, then to slop, which for a couple of days was taken lightly as the screws slopped out the cells themselves and handed men their food wearing the same clothes they used to do the slop. The men threw the contents of their pots out through the window in the yard, which was then hosed by screws and orderlies, using this excuse to soak anyone who couldn't get their windy closed in time, or simply breaking the windy by the use of the water pressure. The shift in power left screws somewhat demoralised, never knowing what was coming next as the blanket men continued to escalate their protest. They reacted by escalating brutality and violence. All furniture was removed from the cells, leaving only a mattress, 3 blankets and a pillow. Realising what the screws were up to, word went down the wing and the men started smashing the remaining furniture in protest. There was hell to pay as the screws systematically beat men, who were then sent to the boards. Events continued in this vein, accumulating in the smearing of their own excrement on the walls as rotten food, piles of fluid on the floor started to become alive with maggots. The idea of spreading excrement on the walls was that it would dry quicker, and to some extent then the stench wouldn't be as bad. By the end of 1977, blanket men, mostly the married ones, were getting visits. While this was an important issue both strategically and in terms of the morale of both the prisoners and their families, it prompted even more cruel and depraved action by these screws. Mirror searches being one of them, whereby the men were forced to squat over a mirror while the screws allegedly checked for contraband, or the table search, using methods that was nothing more than state-sanctioned sexual assault. Some of these lads, 18, 19, used 6 drunken loyalists, holding a young 18-year-old lad naked over a table and probing him. That's not a search. In 1978 saw the number of blanket men rise from 300, or rise till 300, with H4 now joining the non-conforming blocks. And in the guise of cleaning the walls, administration brought in wing shifts. That meant moving the men en masse from one dirty wing to an empty one, and then they were going to steam, to some extent, steam and clean the cells. Wing shifts were to become the dread among the blanket men, as the treatment that was meted out verged on the psychotic. The introduction of medically endorsed forced washes, a barbaric act, while being taunted, a process whereby the emancipated and battered young men were put in a chair, their hair and their beards were cut, all the while being taunted and bullied despite their vulnerability, and then thrown into a bath of cold water, while the screws had their fun, scrubbing them with deck scrubbers to the point of breaking their skin. After this, they were doused in undiluted disinfectant. The British propaganda machine attempts to conceal the blanket men in these purpose-built and now bursting at the same concentration camp. Their lives were now being exposed by the men through comms being sent out and smuggled out by their wives and friends, families and supporters, of whom there were plenty. The years had been punctuated by visits to the blocks of various individuals, ranging from priests to MPs to British officials, but none as potentially political sensitive as Cardinal Tommaso Fee, who had been engaged in talks for months with Humphrey Atkins and co. This was probably done to try and avoid any potential embarrassment that there was in the light of the papal visit coming to Ireland. As soon as he left the blocks, and it was wee Joe that he met, and Martin and them, when he left the blocks, he said that he'd not seen nothing like it except for the sewers in Calcutta. Sinead, or milk.
Well, public speaking to me is, like pulling teeth to me, but I'll try it on. Do you want me to continue on then, just from Fee? Cardinal Fee come in and I can mind him well in the cell. There was a few people from his diocese in the cell, and I can see him now in his big, the big robe, the big dress thing, and then the big pink belt. But the one thing I will give him before I go on just with a few more details to prove that he was a man of the people. He had these, like, probably about the size of that photo there. He had tobacco all squashed down and in cling film, and he had about 5 of them round his big belt, and he took them out and he gave them to the boys that smoked, and it was like the fellas in the lot, it was like £1 million. But the very fact too that a man, you know, of his standing, a cardinal, would bring it in was a sort of a measure of the man. And funny enough, that's one of the things that stands out. The other thing that stands out in my mind too was he was in the cell and there was 5 or 6 of us, and the cell was plastered with stuff and everything else. But we, not enough been there for years, were hardened to it. But every now and again I was watching Cardinal fake, and he'd throw the hand up to the throat, and the poor creator was just as much as he could do not to throw off like. But and then to keep him there, we were learning Gaelic, and I suppose this, you sort of have to have a sense of humour in these things. But we were learning Gaelic, and very hungry for Gaelic and meanings and all of that. So we started asking him what that townland meant and what this name meant in Irish, and could you translate it? For we toothpaste tube that you could write whatever part of the wall that was kept for that. But and he was a mine of information. I found out afterwards that it's actually a degree in itself, that, you know, and he was a total expert. But I'm sure his expertise, he didn't want it that day because it kept him about an extra halfway in the cell. But he probably didn't. But anyway, that was that part of it.
Did you request to see him, or did he just rap your door?
Well, the Lord gave him to go there and see that man.
I thought, I like your sense of humour, anyway, it's fair play. But no, I take it that there was representatives outside that guided them towards us. Or maybe it was the smell. But anyway, yeah, it was representatives that actually. So, but it was a good fill-up and a good bit of support for the blanket honest cause and against the criminalisation policy. When he did go out and make a major statement that, you know, that he had never seen the likes of this before, and the only time he had ever seen it was the families living in the big huge sewers in the, as he called, the head holes of Kilcotta, and that actually probably was the big fillip, you know, that actually set the blanket off on, you know, as a big publicity thing, and it actually took that because we weren't getting much where with that at the time. I suppose I'll go on now just a bit down the blanket. I was in the, after, funny enough, one of the real bad wing shifts, I ended up in the cell with Martin Hurson. And, you know, to be truthful, when you ended up in the cell with somebody from your own part that you had, that you knew, and they knew your part of the country, it was a big, big advantage to you, because you could talk about things to them that you couldn't talk to Belfast people about, or people from other parts. Jerry Blute's not here in the audience, is he? Is he? No. Well, anyway, one time I got a wing move and I was put in the cell with Jerry Blute, and I was only in for about 2 months. But I can say that the 2 months I spent with Jerry Blute was like 2 full years. And I never was as glad to get a wing move and get out of the cell.
Remember who you are and what you represent?
That's right, that's right. His famous saying was, young fellas would be coming in and be talking about, you know, who was going to who, what girl and what, you know. So the next thing, and the next thing, how's that?
John George, remember him, Tommy? He was a wee criminal and he decided he wanted to be a blanket man. He came on.
That's right.
They were doing the stories, and I know the books, and John George always put filth on the house, and no, he always put sex scenes on the house, like, and blood was shouting out the door. You know Adam?
That's right.
And he kept naming this guy, everybody was Bloodus or Bloodywo or Bloodo, and Blood wouldn't leave his cell, they battered him.
That's right.
Sorry about that, Joe.
No, you're right. No, don't just, I many things there. But anyway, Blood's famous saying was, when the fellows would be talking about girls and stuff and one thing and all, he used to get up to the door and let a big bang and he'd say, remember who you are and who you represent, and none of that lemonade talk. So that was Blood. But I just wanted to make sure he wasn't here, because he's a great big lad. Like.
I thought, she not one Adams playing right, isn't it?
Yeah?
But not one Adams playing.
No.
So that was good, but anyway, it must have been like that's what 35 years ago now. You just don't get things that accurate. But anyway, it must have been somewhere near the force washing. So Martin and myself, unfortunately, in H3, were the two first to be force washed. And that was now, we're not going to go into the total detail of it, but it was just a hammering match, and they took Horsenby out first, kicked the disc out of his back, broke his toes going through the grills, took him to a cold bath, took 7 o'clock razors till him, cut him all over, every road. He landed back to the cell. I didn't know him. That's the truth. He may as well have been a total stranger. Just beard and all cut out, big lacerations every road. So they went out then. And James I says, Horsenby, I says, what? The none of God. Happened anyway. He says, James, he says, Joe, he says, I'll end up killing us. But James I says, well, look, you by, I couldn't contradict that. Little did the creator know he would die in the place. But that was long before the blanket lack, or a bit before it. But so the next thing, and about 20 minutes later, I was wicked out and got the same treatment, broken teeth and broken nose and broken stuff, and way down the M1 and with the blue light to the Royal. So Horsenby then was moved up to the prison hospital that day, and I was took down to the Royal. And that's the last time I seen Martin Horsen, was getting bait up the wing on the stretcher, the wee thing at the side of the door you could see through, by 6 screws, including the infamous Paddy Joe Kerr, who O'Glen Ahern assassinated for war crimes, or dispatched for war crimes against the prisoners. And he was a total lout. He enjoyed the beatings, he enjoyed torture, he enjoyed searches in intimate places. He just was a pure thug. So whoever out there done that, fair justice. That's what I said. So then that was it, and I never seen Martin again after that. The live, that was it. It was a place, I suppose, like the boys were saying here, if you had a strong mind and all of that there, it wasn't the place to be. But as Joe says, anybody who at least tried to go up it, even fellas that only done maybe a couple of weeks, a couple of months, whatever, fellas went up and sort of couldn't stick it and went up and back down again. Fair dues to them. We never thought anything ill of them people, but it was the people that were so-called Republicans, especially ones in senior positions, who left the crumb and give out their big hard speeches and everything else about criminalisation, and then never even tried. So that was a big thing. But anyway, I'll hand on to the next person here, who's.
No, you go ahead yourself.
Me? Well,
Say who you are first, another one will you?
balls. No, I'm alright. I'm Dixie. I live from Derry.
Can everybody see him?
You something say me, you don't need me to stand up. Do you fucking out? Fuck's sake. I'm Dixie Elliott from Derry. Some of you might know me from the internet. But anyway, I went on the blanket protest after I was sentenced in June 1977, and I stayed on it to the end in October 1981. But I'm just coming at it from the point of view of men being allowed to die so that Owen Kieran could win a by-election, and from what I remember of it, and from what was happening. And it's beginning about, it was I was in a cell in Hicksford with Paul McElwee, and we were moved. They tried to break the blanket by moving the leadership, from the OCs and stuff, from the various wings and stuff, and a single wing up in H6. And for some reason they moved me in Big Tom too. But we got a lot of insight in there, and a lot of insight in what was going on at the time. Now what I'm saying is about the thing is, Joe, the thing we said about men leaving the protest, that with the escalation of the protest, where we were basically living in our own excrement and everything else, the windows was boarded up and everything else in the biddings, the wing shifts, constant wing shifts, you were getting hammers and everything else. And the fact when I was on my Big Tom, it was the winter sale, Christmas 1978, and we were in the cell. I always remember it was Big Tom. Tom was fucking totally mad, he didn't fear nobody. And they were coming around the cells, and Big Tom was up at the door with fist clenched, big fucking country man. And I was standing at the window cursing him for being a man. No. And they came into the cell and dragged us across. And Big Tom says to me, he says, put a finger on me, I'm hitting him. So we were standing there, and the thing with the screw was poking me with the scissors, and the other screw thing, the next thing I seen this fucking screw beside Tom went down. And then I had no fucking choice, so I had to hit the screw beside me. And they gave us one hell of a hammer. They gave us serious hammer, and they threw us into a back van naked. We were taking the boards, we were put on what they call the #1 diet. Like was black tea and toast, dry toast, and soup with a spud on it for dinner time, black tea and toast. And it was a very decent diet basically. And Christmas Eve they gave us an amnesty, brought us back. No, they told us we go back to the Thingway, so we went back. So it was basically because of the Thingway, because Big Tom was always punching them, probably they moved us, but we ended up getting moved anyway. And we ended up, and at the time, because of all this and because everything was going on, as I say, this was going on with everybody, it wasn't, know what I mean, taking these hammers and everything else, that basically people was leaving the protest. They couldn't take it anymore, and as Joe says, like, you couldn't blame them or anything like that. And I remember that Art was saying about, they were discussing going into the system and smashing it within and wrecking the system within. But the thing that stood in the way of doing this was the prison uniform. We simply could not wear the prison uniform. Anything else didn't matter. It didn't matter about work, all these other issues, like it was the prison uniform, blah, blah, blah. So they cut on anyway the hunger strikes and up to the 5th of July, 6th of July. Was Bobby had died, or Bobby had won the Westminster by-election, and 100,000 turned out at his funeral. Kieran Doherty and Paddy Agnew had won down the south. There was a couple of near misses and stuff like this. Pressure was on Thatcher and everything else. And on July the 4th, Big Ricky wrote a statement. And as I say, I had moved in, along with all them, from H6 to H3, we'd moved. H3 was a young block, and they were coming on the biggest pressure, they were getting the worst hammers and stuff like that, and we ended up on there. And it was, this is when the Dark and all decided, they says, look, the only other alternative, because men is leaving the protests and stuff like this, and these young lads is getting a hammer, and you know what I mean, getting a bad time, we need a hunger strike. So the other alternative, or else we were going to sit, and I remember the Dark saying we were going to sit with 100 men on the protest, isolated in the corner of some block. You know what I mean? So that's the hunger strikes. But back to the thing now was on July the 4th, Richard O'Rourke wrote a statement. It was after the 4 deaths. Now, they had, as Richard Simpson will tell me, they didn't intend going beyond 4 deaths. And after the 4 deaths, they put their heads together and they says, look, we'll have to pull back here from the thing. So they pulled back and they sent out a statement which was basically saying that all prisoners could avail of the 5 demands in the north. And straight away, this was the opening of Thatcher, and the way Thatcher was out. Now, there was 2 routes of negotiations going on then. There was the NIO and the Irish Commission of Justice and Peace, which was the Catholic Church and the SDLP and all. But basically what they were then, they had become then, was a cover for the mountain climber channel. Now the mountain climber was in the first hunger strike, wasn't that Father Maker? No, well he was he brought on that, remember the document that contained the civilian takeover? He was undelivered at the Adams. Well, the mountain climber was basically the code name for the channel. Before that was a guy called Michael Loakley, who was meeting fucking McInnes way back in the 70s. And then during the first hunger strike it was a Father Maker. And then when it was opened then, it was Brenton Dudley, a businessman from Derry. He was the mountain climber. And they had, basically, Thatcher had told him, she hadn't written anything out, she says, well not Thatcher, well this was, say, the Foreign Office, who was acting on behalf of Thatcher, who Thatcher was dictating to. And what they had basically done was to give it verbally, told them to write it down, was what they were offering. And it was more or less, was clothes. The main thing was the clothes. The clothes was there, you had recreation and something around remission, getting half remission back and blah blah blah. There was no real thing on work or
Free association.
no, was it work and segregation. But the fact of the matter, we were association, but the fact of the matter was that the loyalists had said on numerous occasions that if a blanket man came on that thing, they said there's no way. You know what I mean? They would fucking shoot the screws before they would try it because they thought we were not head cases all together. So we had no worries about that. But this offer from Thatcher on July the night, July the 5th, the 6th, and it was sent down and Brendan Dudley gave it. He says in Belfast, he said at a meeting in Belfast, and he pointed Danny Morrison out and he says, you took that up, the thing, right? And give him the back. He took brought it back to the wing and passed it up to Richard. Richard looked at it and he was similar. They were over here, out the window, and one of the guys went public and says over here was wee Clicky Clark. I know other guys who says, and I know others has heard it, but they're not willing to come forward, but Clicky came forward. And the rest of us in the wing, of course, the rumour came down, it's all over, Joe McDonald's not going to have to die, the Ritz is moving. And we all heard it in the wing and everything else. And basically, as Richard O'Rourke says, they agreed out the window. They agreed in Irish, took it over on. That's it, you know what I mean? And they were over here. Word was sent outside, and as Richard says, we didn't know at the time, but as Richard says, Adams overruled it. And it was always kept from the hunger strikers. Now, if you look at 10 men dead, you read 10 men dead, and 10 men dead is written on all the columns, based on all the columns was written, and you go to that time, July the 5th, July the 5th, there's only one column from back to Adams, and it's talking about a meeting with the Irish Commission of Justice and Peace, and Adams and the hunger strikers. There's no mention of the mountain climber, of this thing. Now, back originally says when Adams came out, he says the Fergal McKinney, when Fergal McKinney put it to him, he says no, there was no offer, and McKinney says no offer at all, he says none whatsoever. Then at the gas yard meeting, when the document was thrown down, which was the Thatcher document, when that was thrown down in front of Brenton Dudley, he was shocked, and he says, where did you get this? He knew that was the thing. He wasn't given this document, but he knew that's what he was told to take on the prisoners. And he was shocked, and he admitted that this is what was there and everything else. And it was, as I say, he admitted that, and that this is what he says, that he had given it, they pass on, it was Morrison took it on, and that it was never shown to the hunger strikers. They were never shown it. Now, as I say, this is why Gerard Hodgkins was fairly saying, originally saying on, and he says, no, we were never shown anything from a mountain climber or told anything about the mountain climber or nothing. It was all kept back from them. And the shocking thing that started to emerge in people's heads was this was kept back because Adams didn't want the hunger strike over. He didn't want, there has to be no water explanation. They didn't want it over. They needed it going for the by-election. They needed it going here and elected. And when you look at it, Brenton Duddy then, if you look at Brenton Duddy's own notes, and on the 20th of July, Brenton Duddy says, it's 2:30 in the morning, Brenton Duddy said, I'm tired, I can't go on. This is 2 weeks later. I'm tired, I can't go on, I can't save Kieran Doherty's life. The British want their plan to work, but A won't move. Now the British plan was, and then this is what comes with this, they reneged on an offer in the first hunger strike one. The British plan was they wanted the hunger strike ended first. Then they says as soon as the hunger strike's finished, we'll release this in document form straight away. Know this offer. Now you have to also realise at that time the Irish Commission of Justice and Peace was still negotiating with the NIO. And what was going to happen, they had said they would act as guarantors over any no offer or the thing like. Adams went straight to the Emmons and told them of the mountain climber offer. Now Brenton Duddy had told Adams not to mention what was going on. The British didn't want it known that they were in communication. He went and told the Irish Commission of Justice and Peace. They went to the NIO, told the NIO, and you see when you see all these things about the NIO was about to go on, the NIO was about to go on, this is what happened. When they were told there was murder, was uproar and everything else, why did Adams do it? Adams also told the Irish Commission of Peace, who says they would stand over and act as guarantors, he asked them to step aside. And as I say, Brenton Duddy says on the 20th of July he couldn't go on, he couldn't save Joe McDonald's life. And this is what it was, that they wanted the hunger strike to end first. They wanted Adams to go, get a yes, we're accepting this no offer, come back to the Emmons, but end the hunger strike. They would have drafted. Now if you look at that Thatcher document, she has added notes to it and no round it in her own handwriting. You know, she's not going to do that there, think we. She wanted the hunger strike over before the by-election. Do you know what I mean? Because she knew as well as Adams knew that if the hunger strike was over, the SDLP would stand and Owen Kieran wouldn't have won the seat. The Unionists would have won. And as I say, it was rejected by Adams and went on. And as we know, Owen Kieran won the election on the same day as Mickey Devine died. And what a lot of people don't know is 3 days later, Sinn Féin announced, without putting it the movement or anything else, that they would stand in all future elections in the North. They slid it through onto the radar of Mickey Devine's death. And if you go on the Keane website and read the chronology of the hunger strike, you'll see it. After the thing, they announced the thing, and then it was the famous ballot box in Armley that October when it ended. And as I say, like, when the hunger strikes eventually ended, it was all over, we got the closing and thing, alright, we didn't get work issues or anything like that resolved, and that came later. But the fact was, the matter was, 6 of the men didn't need to die. 6 of the men died for the peace process. And it wasn't just, see when you look at it, it wasn't just 6 men dying on the hunger strike. Gerry Adams now admits that he was involved in the peace process. He admitted the Ellis McDermott and his brother's trial. He was involved in the peace process in 1987. So he was negotiating with Adams and hockey, or with Hume and hockey and people like that. He was sending IRA volunteers and cruising them to go out. And men was dying at Lochgall and Gibraltar and stuff like that while he was talking behind their back. So it wasn't just that, no, they had sacrificed the hunger strikers, he had sacrificed everybody up to then for the so-called peace process. So, sorry they're going to be a bit muddled in between, but I was just trying to get things in my head because I don't like using notes or anything. So,
No, but you're right. You're right, Dixie. There's one thing, I'll make one point just. You know, every good negotiator go way above what you really want. And knocking off the 5 demands of their association, more letters and your own work on your own wings. All of them there didn't really matter. Now, do you see if somebody said to me, you know, I want an extra hour association, or I want something as trivial as extra letters, and somebody was going to die for it, I'd say, take a run, jump. That's definitely not on. So the one thing that was keeping us, that we really wanted, as I say, you can go way above your acceptable line, and that was the prison uniform, which was going to criminalise, you know, 800 years of Republican struggle. Now that wasn't going to happen. But anything outside of that there, which it looks very like it, and I think there was even 30 or 40-year papers that was, 40-year papers there must have been that was released there, and even Adams within one of them papers is saying that offer's a good offer. It actually says it in one of them papers, so we're not even depending now on other Republicans to say that, you know, he has admitted it himself. Now, outside of the uniform, you know, if we got the uniform, then naturally enough, there was no need for anybody else to die. Absolutely not. The uniform was the key thing. It was the key thing of the British criminalisation policy. Once you broke the uniform, that was it. We could go in and suffer for a while by letters and associations. Them was only trivial things. Once the uniform was the big thing, and that was it. And so really and truly, you know, it's a desperate situation altogether that 6 other men had to die, especially when the uniform had been granted by the British government at that time. And but it's like everything else. You've seen all the what do you call, the scandals about Adams and about all down throughout the years, and it's just like water, but it's snow, and that's it.
That's it.
So you know, he won't be worrying about that or anything else, but I just think of the poor families and all, and the trauma and everything they were put through, and 6 good Republicans that are laying in their graves that actually shouldn't be there. So that's how serious it is. But anyway, that's me.
Just to pick up on the point about the civilian clothes. Like, first of all, at the time I had been naive.
is this a civilian clothes or our own
No,
clothes?
our own clothes.
There's difference.
I understand that. But it was shortly after the clothes were given that the end went from a thing where you have 1 or 2 men locked in a cell, and now you have 40 or 50 out, and just a couple of screws in the wing. That changes the whole dynamic of this. The idea of the workshops, like, I was in H4 and we were ordered into the workshops, right? And when we went into the workshops, they wanted them to be a mixed workshop, but the only ones they could find to go to them were born-again Christians, about 4 or 5 of them. They ended up getting blew up with a fireball, and they would have went and come back. Over a period of 2 weeks, we sold maybe 1,000 or 2,000 doctors' coats, one of them white coats. Every single pocket was sold on upside down. The civilian staff were told not to come near us, and they were threatened and they wouldn't come near us. The screws didn't want us. And when they finally found out that these 1,000 coats were useless, or whatever anybody else was doing, they told us we weren't allowed to go to one. We had to stay in one. And then when it come to segregation, you had people like Big Dennis, you had Big Livy, you had people who were doing life. If you're doing life in 1981, you're doing life. You're not getting out. You know, there was no sign of people getting out of jail here. So the likes of these men were sent up to the mixed wings. They were getting socks and putting pool balls in them, putting pillowcases in their head and just going into the Lloyd's and saying, right, get out of here. One of the ones who went into was Lenny Murphy's cell. And Lenny was one of the first ones to jump to the bed and say that I'm going to pick my men. And there was, as you say, there was the fear that these lunatics was coming up.
And that's the way it ended, and it should have ended on July the 5th, 1981.
That's lovely. Thanks.
I'll just sum up here, hopefully. We've had several very insightful contributions here tonight, outlining what was at stake from the very beginning, that the British government had decided that it was going to change the narrative to its advantage and designate what was a battle for democracy and independence, and put a different spin on it to say that it was just a criminal conspiracy, and as such therefore they would deal with it by normal criminal judicial means. And that was what was at stake. It was a huge battle we were fighting because the British had decided. And let's keep in mind that those that first implemented this was not Margaret Thatcher and the Tories, although they certainly contributed enormously to the crisis, but it was a Labour Party in England, in Britain, that decided to run with the policy of criminalisation, ulsterisation, normalisation, as they called it at the beginning. Underlying tensions that has been described to you here tonight about that blanket protest. When I went first after being convicted onto the wing in H3, actually the first names I heard for having been brutally treated was actually Joe McNulty here and Martin Hurston. They were, at the time when I was brought onto the wing, Joe and Martin were still in hospital. Joe, when he came back, if I'm not mistaken, was brought to the YP wing, the Young Prisoners wing. Martin Hurston was brought onto our wing, but only for a few days, and then was transferred to H4. We were in H3. But there's something I think that we have to keep in mind here, that I'm not going to certainly not contradict anything that you've heard, but what I want to say is expand this a little. Something Joe McNulty mentioned there about some of the senior figures not actually weighing in and taking part. And there's something to think about that, because those that took part on the blanket were by and large almost exclusively the rank and file of the Irish Republican Army, and in fairness the Irish National Liberation Army. And let's be very clear about this, that we're seeing and have been hearing now over the last practically 35 years, and as recently as that most recent film, 66 Days, Bobby Sands, a sanitised version of what happened, with the inference being that this was a Sinn Féin initiative, that this was a political party initiative, that this was an electoralist initiative. What was happening was a conflict between the Irish Republican Army and the British state, and of course with our comrades in the Irish National Liberation Army. So let's be very clear, we were talking here about the soldiers of the Irish Republican Army and those of the Irish National Liberation Army. And because of the numbers involved, we were talking about the rank and file. And very shortly, some of the men here referred to that winter of '78, very shortly after I was sentenced. And at that particular time, we didn't have what become known as the grills over the window. The glass was gone, the covering was gone, and we were looking out into the clear blue air. And that was one of the coldest winters that we had. And I remember waking up one morning and the snow actually covering the bed. It wasn't a bed, it was a sponge on the floor, on the blanket. And I wasn't alone in that. Every other man on the protest that morning woke up with the snow covering his blankets. And at that stage, I think what has dawned on me was not just the pressure that we were under, but the actual quality of the manpower within the Irish Republican Army. That for whatever might have been said about them, here was a group of men that in every respect were not unusual, were not special. It was the ordinary rank and file of the Republican Army, which was the front line of the Republican community. Because we were no better, we were no greater, we were no stronger than the community that was behind us and the people from which we came. And I think that that in itself indicated the mettle of the people, of the Republican people, particularly of the 6 counties, and their ability to stand, their ability to resist, and their ability to endure. And that was what that typified that particular protest. And it struck me that morning when I watched the snow gathering around our blankets, that that was what we were dealing with. And a magnificent group of men who were taken out of very normal circumstances. We weren't talking here about men that had, in terms of the British or the Yankees talking about their elite forces. These were the rank and file of the Republican Army and the Irish National Liberation Army. People who represented their own people and did that and did it wonderfully well. The fact that throughout that campaign, and again, all of the speakers here have referred to the fact that without the people behind us, the campaign would have faltered. And something that might be a surprise, probably not to those of us that were there at the time, but the leadership of the Republican movement was very, very reluctant to support the blanket protest. That had it not been for a group of women, particularly from Turf Lodge, who literally embarrassed the leadership of the IRA into coming out to support the blanket, that there would have been very, very little support even from within the Republican movement. And therefore it was those women who forced the issue. Then thereafter, the issue that in many ways turned it from the public view was the issue that Joe talked about, the visit of Cardinal Fee. But that led almost directly to one of the largest marches that was held before the hunger strikes in our support. It happened in 1978 from Cullelan to Dungannon, where there was about 20,000 people on the basis of the support. And that's what we're talking about, massive support from the population in support of the people and men on that protest. So we're not talking about, and we can never deny the heroism of those who died on hunger strike, and we never will and never could. But we also have to recognise that this was part of the membership of the organisations and the community that supported them. That this is a community that is capable of rising to the highest level of conflict, the highest level of engagement. People who, when exercised, engaged with, and given the opportunity, will deliver enormous results and heroically. And for that reason, it's a cruel outcome to see that that heroism, that dedication, that commitment, that ability to be misused and directed in the wrong way. But, having said that, I would argue that there's only so far we can go in terms of looking back. We've got to look forward. But looking forward informed by what we know about ourselves, about our ability, and about the community from which we come and the community in which we have been reared and lived, is that we are capable of delivering much, much more than what has been delivered. We are capable of delivering much better than that venial institution that sits in Stormont, arguing over who's going to drive. Sharing out who drives the ministerial motor cars, arguing over and sharing out and agreeing on the quiet benefits from the royal prerogative. Better than that venial institution that sits in Dublin, asking Brussels for how much they want paid back for the gambling debts of bankers. The twin imperialisms that are imposed upon our people here in the 6 counties by Britain and their financial allies, and in the 26 counties by America, the European Union and their financial masters. That we have got the people, we have got the programme, we have got the vision, we've got the courage to overturn the imperialism. And if you want to know whether we're capable of doing it, you look back at Joe McNulty or Dixie Elliott coming back after baiting after Joe and Noel. And listen, they mightn't like to hear this, but they're just ordinary fellas, and only ever were capable of raising. And as Frankie pointed out, not just those on the blanket, because the cards fell our way. I have no doubt that any other man or woman in this room that presented with the same difficulty, presented with the same challenge, because you come from where you come from, you'd be capable of dealing with it just as bravely as these guys did. So that's the challenge that we've got to take up and move forward, because the thing about it is, comrades and friends, we can do it, and therefore we must do it, and we will do it.
Does anybody want to ask any questions? Prisoner families who go to the front of these prison protests, irrespective of where they were. Also those who struggled in whatever prison they were in and for whatever length of time, the story needs to be told. Thirdly, while all this was going on the blanket and in Long Kesh, women were being brutalised, tortured, strip-searched and living also in filth in our jails. So in conclusion, we'll be holding another series of talks on all prison experiences, and hopefully we'll see us all there, and we'll be asking people to take part in those talks. Go on, slam it.
I could not wear their prison gear, I was a blanket man. I'll not accept their status, I'll not be criminalised.